If you've been following the lithium space, you'd know the latest company to take a big hit to their development plans is Lake Resources. They are listed as LKE on the ASX, and they've just come out and basically said that the timelines and the capital expected in order to make their 50,000 tonne per annum lithium carbonate plant has gone out the window. Today, we're going to be taking a look at some of the reasons as to why this has occurred and what it means for holders. Let's take a look. How's it going, guys? Ryan here and welcome back to another stock investing video, and today we are taking another look at Lake Resources and more specifically the situation that Lake Resources and its holders are currently in. If you've been following this space, you would know that recently Lake Resources has crashed down to 30 cents per share. Keeping in mind, just 12 months ago, they were going up to that point of over $2 a share. They hit a high of $2.65, so a drop all the way down to the 30 cents per share mark is very, very significant and obviously really not good for the holders of Lake Resources. This is a company we've covered on the channel previously, and they were touted as being able to create a 50,000 tonne per annum plant of LCE, and that basically went to smithereens in the past announcement. Unfortunately, the timelines got significantly delayed, the costs got significantly blown out, and we're going to be having a bit more of a deep dive into that, as well as just having a quick look at the current state of the stock price on the chart itself. So what I first want to kick off with is just some of the commentary and the rumors that were going around prior to this actually being announced, and why this has then resulted in a big crash, and what a lot of people were saying actually did come true. For those following the Lake Resource story, you would know that they've positioned themselves as basically one of the next big lithium suppliers on the ASX, and they were going to basically build a 50,000 tonne per annum plant using DLE, direct lithium extraction, which is basically a method for extracting lithium out of brine that is a lot more environmentally friendly. And one of their big selling points was the fact that they were able to produce lithium at a large scale in a much cleaner manner. And this has been going on for a few years now, but many people actually have raised concerns. Some of these concerns raised were the ability to actually use DLE at such a large scale, because it really hasn't been done before. A second was the actual expense in order to get the plant up and running. And the third was the timelines that we did see were consistently changing and being pushed out, with the DFS being one of the critical pieces that we consistently saw being pushed out from roughly about 2021. Now, understandably, as a result of not too much happening over the past couple of years, the share price did see a bit of a decline. I say a bit, but it went from, as I said, $2.65 all the way down to where we're at now at 30 cents per share. But roughly before then, we were sitting at least double that value at about 50 to 60 cents before it all came to a head in the past 2 weeks, where the company actually released an announcement stating what was currently going on. Lake Resources released an update to the market that contained many issues that people had been saying for a number of months and years. And basically what it did was confirm that these concerns were in fact true and they weren't rumors. And there were 3 key things, in my opinion, that really stood out. The first to do with the sizing of the facility, the second to do with the upfront capital costs, and the third was to do with the timeline that was currently in place, and more specifically when the DFS and actual construction was going to begin. Lake Resources basically gathered all this data through doing analysis over the past 6 to 12 months after a big change up in their management team, and going back through the analysis and the research and all the work that had already been done to actually identify what was realistic. The first big issue, as I mentioned, was the size of the plant. Initially, we were always going to see a 50,000 tonne per annum plant being built. Now what's happened is that this has been split into a 2-phase plant. That is phase 1 for 25,000 tonnes per annum, and then phase 2 50,000 tonnes per annum. Now on face value, this doesn't seem like such a bad thing, as a ramp up process would of course always be required, but what really was the big issue was the timelines being pushed out. Now, we're seeing that secondly with the DFS, this timeline was the biggest one. They've been saying consistently that the DFS is coming. Right now, we were expecting to see the DFS land mid-year. Unfortunately, once again, that's been pushed out for another 6 months. And the DFS isn't even for the full 50,000 tonne per annum plant. It's just only for phase 1, which is the 25,000 tonne per annum plant. Understandably, people are now nervous because this entire time, Lake Resources has committed to the 50,000 tonne plant and has missed many deadlines. Will this deadline actually be hit? That is the real question now. The third part was the fact that the costs have absolutely blown out for the construction of the facility. Initially, they were stating that it would cost about $540 million in order to create their facility, but this has now blown out to between 1.1 to 1.5 billion dollars, and that is only just for the first phase 1 plant. This has then caused even more concern due to the fact that Goldman Sachs had released basically a report in the past that said DLE projects should cost between $26,000 to $34,000 per ton of lithium carbonate extracted. What we're seeing now is that on the results, this phase 1 project alone will cost them from $44,000 to $60,000 per ton of LCE actually extracted from the lithium itself. So that plus the capex itself is a massive blowout. The ratios have been thrown out, the finances have been thrown out, and as a result, the market has obviously not reacted well to this news, resulting in a plummet of the share price. This is obviously the bad side of things as a result of this announcement, but of course, you always have to try and look for the good. First and foremost, what we've seen is the Lake management team have put in place a much more realistic timeline with regards to how they're going to get their 50,000 tonne per annum facility that they initially promised up and running. The initial timelines that were proposed are clearly unrealistic, which was echoed by what people were saying over the past year or two, and as a result, we are now seeing a more realistic approach being put in place. Secondly, over the past 6 to 12 months, we have seen a massive revamp in the overall management team. Now, whilst this has caused significant disruption, it's clear that the people who have come in have taken a serious look at the Kachi project and gone, actually, you know what? This is not realistic, and they're the ones who've put this more realistic timeline in place. Hopefully though, what we're going to see is that this timeline is now adhered to, the costs are a bit more realistic, and they are able to find funding in order to produce the plant. How long that will take though, who knows? I think realistically, based on what they've said, their target for phase 1 being 2027 and phase 2 being 2030 or 2031 until they get up to actual full production capacity is significantly more realistic, especially when it comes to DLE type technology. But of course, for investors, that is in fact quite a long time away, considering right now we're in 2023. We thought a plant possibly would have been built within the next 2 years, and unfortunately that has significantly blown out, and it is basically almost coming up to a decade away. There is also another peripheral factor that I think has attributed to the overall drop in value over the past period of time, which is to do with the CEO, Mr. David Dixon. And what I'm going to do is actually read out the announcement itself, because it is to do with a legal situation that was resolved, but of course negatively impacts on his character when you are looking at the current company he is running. The announcement that was released states, Lake Resources notes that CEO David Dixon and the US Securities Exchange Commission have resolved a legacy matter involving issues relating to the 2018 merger between McDermott International Incorporated a company where Mr. Dixon served as CEO prior to joining the company, and Chicago Bridge and Iron Corporation. Without admitting or denying the SEC's findings, Mr. Dixon has agreed to pay a $100,000 US civil money penalty for directly causing McDermott in the second quarter of 2018 to maintain incorrect books and records and to file an inaccurate quarterly report. This SEC matter is not related to Mr. Dixon's role with the company, nor Lake's operations, assets, financial results, financial reporting, or financial outlook. Now, even though this has nothing to do with Lake Resources itself, it's definitely not a good look for the CEO of the company to be involved in this sort of a situation. Furthermore, given the fact that we have seen historically what people were saying with regards to the rumors of blowouts in costs, blowouts in timelines, and many other things, this is another sort of pattern that we have seen of where the head of the company has done something that was basically eluding or not showing the shareholders and of course the SEC what was factually going on within the company itself, and unfortunately breaking the law as a result. So what are my thoughts on the whole situation? Well, first and foremost, I feel bad for all the holders of Lake Resources, and I certainly hope that people who watch the channel watch my informational videos and then go and do their own research on the company. As I mentioned, this is a company I have previously covered, but I always implore people to make sure they do their own research and certainly don't base any financial decisions purely off the videos I'm making. When it comes to Lake Resources itself, I have a few key concerns. Of course, what everyone's been echoing. The financing, that is going to be the big one with the costs blowing out. Secondly, of course, we are seeing the timelines as well blowing out. That is a major concern. And I think those two things are probably the two major issues that we realistically have. Alternatively though, we are seeing that Lake Resources is going to have to rely on high lithium prices in order to be profitable. But of course, due to those delays, you never know, the lithium bull run that we have experienced over the past 5 years may be coming to a close by the time that they actually get the plant up and running. That is really what the big risk is that they're running. Now also, the share price, as we know, is currently in tatters at the moment. Is there any ability for Lake Resources to recover from this, given their history of saying one thing and of course unfortunately doing another, coupled of course with the CEO being in place? Maybe the CEO will not be in place moving forward, changes might be made, I'm not too sure, but I certainly know that shareholders will not be happy with Lake Resources at this point in time because many of them have likely lost quite a bit of money. Now, before we finish up with today's video, what we're going to do is jump into the chart just briefly. We're not going to do any major technical analysis, but we're going to look at where the share price was and where it is now, and sort of, I suppose, where the next levels of support and resistance are for Lake Resources. Welcome into the Lake Resources chart, guys, and as you can see, the share price certainly has taken a massive tumble, unfortunately tumbling all the way from their high up here, which was at $2.65 on the 5th of April 2022, to where they are now. If you can see just down here, it is roughly sitting right now at a value of just over 30 cents per share. So a real massive drop. You can't really see because the volume's in the way, but you can see the red candles there are showing us that there was a massive spike in selling. I'll remove that, and what you can see is that the drop occurred straight after the announcement itself was released. People getting out due to the fact that, of course, this is confirmation that the rumors are true and that Lake Resources is unable to meet their targets both financially and from a timeline perspective. Where does that realistically leave us? Well, what I'm going to do is just zoom out and put in place where the support currently is. You can see it's bounced off this point over here, and I'll extend it out, and you can see this has been a major point of price action in the past. when it comes to, of course, a point of resistance, we're immediately going to see one roughly at about 40 to 41 cents. This has been a previous support point here, and back over here, once again, you can see it's been a point of resistance and a lot of price action in the past as well. Overall, things are not looking good. You can see that that 20-day moving average has crossed straight below the 50-day moving average, and things are moving in a downwards direction. Where do I think Lake Resources will get to? Well, at the end of the day, things aren't looking good. And I think shareholders are going to continue to sell as a result of what's going on now. You may have a few people jump in and try and trade it, but overall, from a long-term point of view, things aren't looking good. I would expect to see Lake Resources under 30 cents as a result of what's occurred within the next few weeks. That wraps up today's video on Lake Resources. Let me know what your thoughts are on the current Lake Resources situation down in the comments section below, and where you think they will end up in the future. Do you think they're going to be able to stick to their timelines and their costs, or do you think simply this is a pipe dream? Let me know down below. Of course, if you did enjoy today's video, make sure you do leave a thumbs up. And if you want to see more of this sort of content, hit subscribe and turn on those bell notifications. I'll leave it there for today, guys. I hope you have an awesome day. I'll see you next time. Cheers.